So we are aware of the strengths here that Judith has, or that we have with having Judith on board. But because she joins halfway through the year, we also need to be aware that there is a problem there that you need to, if you like, to catch up to speed. Right, another weakness is something we must, and I've mentioned before, this idea of what's referred to as a silo mentality. And a silo mentality really is to do with the fact that when you have a functional structure, people tend to work individually and completely, if you like, run their own individual organizations in their individual departments as though they're individual organizations, and do not talk to each other. And if you like, see themselves as, if you like, an organization. And it's really the job of the managing director to enable this to happen. So this is a potential threat. Yes, this is a potential, if you like, threat, an internal threat. They don't mention it, but it's something that you have with, especially when you have directors who have been there for a very long time. This is also a potential threat. Some other strengths. So the company has a range of outlets for generating revenue. They have a website it controls, and this is a necessary gateway to the global market. They have independent stores and major retailers throughout the UK and overseas. So they have the potential to exploit a global market, and they seem to have the right portals to do so. So these are advantages and strengths that they have. The other good thing here is that 75% of the revenue is in the UK. So here they're dealing in a situation where they shouldn't have too many shocks with regards to revenue from other parts of the world. When it comes to the currency, at least it's a currency they know well. That's their main currency. The brand also has iconic status. Good. So this is the next issue really. Now this is Porter's 5 forces, right? And let me just explain something that you need to be happy with. The 5 forces. There are 5 areas of Porter's 5 forces. You have this relationship between industry. You have the threat of new entrants. You have the threat of substitutes. So, for example, other products that customers can go for and choose. And then you have the customers who are here, and then you have your suppliers. And this is a really, really good table. You must really understand and be happy with this table. This is really Porter's 5 forces. That's what we're dealing with. And Michael Porter is his name. So you can either write that or Google that and make sure you're happy with where this has come from. So let's focus a little on this, on this Porter's 5 forces. So here we are. Now, it says Rawhide. It tells us that Rawhide has one major competitor in this central space. So I've written here, mention Porter as often as you can, that it needs to think about and be aware of. But this whole idea of having one major competitor, it's only for 2 of its products: the model railway and the toy car markets. Right? So the model railway and the toy car markets. This is the critical thing. So we're not talking about the board games. We are talking about the model railway and the toy car market. So in this market, we're clearly told that they have just one major competitor. So if we go back here, we can apply Porter's 5 forces to the models and the toy car, and then we need to apply another Porter's 5 forces to the board games. So we're clearly told why is this? Why do they have this degree of power? And we're clearly told that this is primarily due to the strengths of the company brands, which make market entry costs highly prohibitive. Again, back to Porter's 5 forces. So because it's so expensive to get into the industry, new businesses cannot easily come in, if you like, into this market and join them because of the entry costs. So you can see they're clearly referring you to Porter's 5 forces. But now when we focus on the board game market, we see that there are several small competitors in the board game market, and immediately we have a different 5 Porters analysis situation. So you can see here that with the board game, suddenly you have a completely different, when I draw this, if you like, and those are your competitors. I'm going to put here suppliers, customers, threat of new entrants, and your threat of new entrants and threat of substitutes. And let's focus on that, and that's what they really want you to do, to focus on these one by one. So you can really start thinking about this, that it is easier to come into this market. First of all, because the raw materials to actually make these games, right, are not so difficult. So we can start to think about the internal competition between the existing companies in the field. We can also start to think about the power of customers who have a range of board games to choose from. So we almost have to think, okay, what strategies do Rawhide have or employ to make sure they are offering customers value for money, right? And again, I've written here, we also can begin to think about the power of suppliers. So we'll come to see that because we're giving quite a bit of information about the suppliers of their board games, if you remember. So we'll see that in a second, the supplier of their board games. Still on this area, we see that Rawhide's head office are all located in London. So there's a lot of control over the supply chain. This means they can almost dictate and be held responsible for quality. So they can really control quality and the speed of the finished product. So going from raw product to finished goods. But again, this is only over the first 2 products. So something you must be very, very comfortable with. The railway products and the model cars and the toy cars. But when we turn to the board games, we see again a very different story. So we see that the board games are produced by a third-party supplier located in India. Then the goods are shipped back to the UK first, probably for quality checks. But this could be something you could expand on, the fact that why you're shipping it back. Why don't you do the quality checks in India? Because you have high distribution costs bringing it back to the UK, right? And then they also have a product range of 1,600, which, I mean, actively managed. This is a wide product range. This is quite a strength in itself, having all these products, if you like. Great. So that's the end of that analysis. And so, yeah, and we'll move on to the next. So we'll talk about company performance next, but go through all that and be very, very comfortable with the fact that we have 2 different categories here. We have the first 2 products and we have board games, and you should be able to do a pestle, a Porter's 5 forces on each of these and clearly see where the strengths are and then what the problems are.